Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ALS United Mid-Atlantic Goals Podcast. My name is Tony Heil, and I am proud to be the Executive Director here at ALS United Mid-Atlantic. If you've listened to our podcast over the past year, you know we've talked with people with a wide variety of perspectives when it comes to this disease. This includes people who are living with ALS, people who are caregivers, neurologists, and other healthcare professionals, our ALS United Mid-Atlantic staff, and even people outside the ALS community who share our commitment to funding science and research and collaborating so we can get closer to new treatments and a cure, not just for ALS, but for everything that's impacting our wider community. As always, you can subscribe and find our episodes on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. Please go back to past episodes to hear some great perspectives on a wide variety of topics. And go to our website, alsmidatlantic.org, to follow more, or follow us on social media at ALS Mid-Atlantic. I am really excited today because our guests for this podcast are Lisa and Bryan Rosica. I first met them a while back. Bryan is living with ALS. He is a teacher. He is not a former teacher, because once a teacher, always a teacher, as my mother will attest to. And he is dedicated to his family and his students. I heard Bryan speak about living with ALS at a special day at Thomas Jefferson University Weinberg Center last year, and it was really amazing. And so we invited Bryan and Lisa to speak at our annual celebration in November 2025, where they really made such a powerful impact on everyone who listened, and I'm so glad they shared their story with us. And now we're going to talk more with some questions and answers for all you to listen to. So with that, Lisa and Bryan, thank you for speaking today.
Thank you for having us, Tony.
So we have questions already prepared, and the first question I have for you both is, how did ALS first come into your life?
Ironically, Tony, when I was in my teens, my mom worked as a hospice nurse. She had a patient she was particularly fond of and wanted me to meet. I think she was very moved by the sadness of his case. I remember walking into the room and seeing him laying in a fully reclined wheelchair and unable to move or talk. He didn't have a communication device like I'm using now to speak with you. He relied on the system of blinking and letterboards. I remember being completely intimidated and overwhelmed in his presence. We stayed for a couple hours, and on the way home my mom explained that he had a disease called ALS. Of course, I had no idea at the time that Lou Gehrig's disease would come full circle in my life some 30 years later. I was diagnosed with bulbar onset ALS when I was 48 years old on December 10, 2020.
That's really powerful. You're around my age, and it means so much to know about that personal connection you had before. Lisa, do you want to add anything about when you first knew about ALS in your life?
Unfortunately, we knew a few people locally that had ALS before Bryan was diagnosed. A local doctor, our daughter's friend from her gymnastics team, the father had ALS, and her sixth grade teacher's husband also had it. So we kind of knew, a little bit before
Great.
He was diagnosed.
So did you know about ALS then before your diagnosis, or you may have already answered that, but do you have anything to say about what you knew before then?
We did. We knew about it, but we didn't realize how much we didn't know about it until we were kind of walking that journey. I think it's hard to really understand the depths of it all and how much affects your whole life until you're living it. So we knew about it, but we didn't know. There was a lot we didn't know, and our kids didn't know very much about it either, other than our one daughter, who we had kind of talked a little bit about it with because her friend's dad, and we were trying to help support him at the time too. So she knew, but again, she just kind of knew a little bit too, knew it was something bad, but didn't really know the full scale.
Thank you. Now, what were the first symptoms, and who noticed them first?
The first symptom I noticed, Tony, was weakness in my tongue. I've never been a big drinker, but when I would have a drink or two, Lisa and I would notice I slurred my words, as if I had 6 or 7. It was very slight at first, but then even with no drinks, I started to notice some slurring. But my concern stayed pretty low, until I started to notice more significant symptoms. At work I recorded a welcome message on my phone answering machine, and when I replayed and listened to it, it didn't even sound like me. Other symptoms followed quickly. When I would eat anything with peanut butter in it, I couldn't use my tongue to pry the peanut butter off the roof of my mouth. And when I would go for a jog, my lower jaw would shake uncontrollably in unison with the pounding of my feet on the pavement. And finally, I noticed when I would look at my tongue in the mirror, I saw tiny muscle fasciculations, which looked like rippling and rolling on the sides of the tongue. It was at that point when I started to research neurological diseases like MS, Parkinson's, and ALS.
Wow. And Lisa, did you notice those things at the same time?
I did. I think we were having like an Eagles party or something, and he said came and told me he was going to go pick up the pizza, and I said, I think you've had too much to drink. You can't go get the pizza. And he was like, I had like half a beer. So that was kind of a first symptom that we noticed was that, the slurring.
And I remember from the annual celebration that Bryan loves pizza.
Buffalo chicken.
I do too. And since you are a teacher, what do you want young people to know about ALS?
That's a great question, Tony. I actually continue to go into schools and do assembly programs for students. I have an absolute blast. I put together a presentation with pictures and videos and talk to the kids about what ALS is, what it feels like, and what types of assistive technology I use to navigate my day. I share a few funny stories, sprinkle in some high-quality dad humor, and try to teach a little bit about life perspective. I try to humanize the disease and put a face to ALS, because as you can imagine, to an 8-year-old, ALS is quite scary, not to mention I look like a spaceman in my wheelchair with all my gear, and with a tube connected to my neck pumping air into my lungs. I want to show them firsthand that even with incredible diversity, you can still make an impact on others. I encourage them to tell people what they saw today, and I always end the presentation with the following message. Last year I was at a school reading a book to a class of 2nd graders. When I finished, a little girl raised her hand and said, "You know, Mr. Rosica, ALS can't stop you from making people smile." That totally blew me away. So I talk about how making people smile really makes me feel absolutely awesome on the inside, and prior to ALS, I used to let so many stupid little things get in the way of trying to make people smile. But ever since I got that beautiful advice from my 2nd grade friend, every morning when I get up I remind myself that not even ALS can stop me from trying to make people smile. And so I challenge them that if making people smile makes them feel awesome on the inside too, then don't let anything get in their way.
That's just beautiful. It's making me smile right now. So I really appreciate that. And I know my son's teachers have that same ethos. That's what a teacher's like. And Lisa, I know you've gone with them to those experiences. What does that seem to you when you see what young people experience learning from Bryan?
It's amazing some of the questions that they have. Their little minds are just thinking of things that I wouldn't anticipate that they would be asking at some of their young ages. So that's kind of interesting, and it's just like they're just amazed by what he can do with the wheelchair and the device and everything. So it's just kind of fun to see their reaction. And then a couple of the places we went to, the kids wrote cards to him afterwards, and some of them were really deep, like the effect that he had on them in just that short amount of time. So I think it's neat to see him being able to be back in the classroom and also see the kids' reaction.
It's wonderful. And I know I asked you, what do you love most about being a teacher?
I actually started my career as a 1st grade teacher and taught in the same community where I live. I then went to 2nd grade, and finally, 4th grade. I spent a total of 12 years in the classroom. And then I was asked to be the school guidance counselor, where I finished up the final 15 years of my career. But Tony, the three things I loved most about education were definitely June, July, and August. Ugh, I'm so sorry. That is such a corny and way overused joke. My sincere apologies. I loved building connections with kids and forming relationships with the families in the community. I still hear from students I had in the past, and since being diagnosed with ALS, they've been some of my biggest supporters. I used to coach soccer to kids in the community as well. God has been slowly building my support system for this battle over the years, and I didn't even know it. We've seen the absolute best in people from my years in education, and the last 5 years have been beautiful in so many ways. Teacher colleagues, students, and families in the community have rallied around us with crazy love, meals, fundraising, prayers, donations, and so much more. We literally couldn't ask for anything more.
That's really amazing, and I know my mom is a teacher, my aunt's a teacher. I know it's not a job. It's really a calling, and you feel so much pride. And I know from hearing from my mom, she'll hear from students years later. I even just heard talk to my high school newspaper, and was talking about my favorite teachers. So that was Mr. Brown. So unfortunately, he's passed away. But if his family ends up finding me because of that article, it's still true. So that was my high school teacher. Obviously, my favorite teacher was my mother because she was my teacher as well. uh, so can you please tell me about the kind of care you receive from the team at the Jefferson Weinberg ALS Center and from ALS United Mid-Atlantic?
Sure. So I don't know what we would have done without those two huge organizations, being part of this. The team at Jefferson, his clinic team, has walked with us every step of the way from the very beginning, and they still are. Every 3 months we would go to a clinic visit, and now we do them telemed. But we would sit in a room, and about 10 different specialists and doctors would come in one at a time, and they would spend time with Bryan, and they would kind of talk about what was happening now and whatever their field was, and where we potentially would be going, what could be coming up, and kind of help him come up with strategies to sort of deal with, what was happening at the moment, and then also helped us be proactive and kind of get us thinking about things that, might be coming down the road. And that was really helpful because as things came down the road, they kind of came faster than we thought they were, but having already some, background a little bit about what was coming. But yeah, there was doctors from pulmonologist, neurologist, PT, OT, speech, palliative care, nurse practitioner, a dietitian. I mean, there's all different kinds of specialists involved in the team. And what I liked is their communication too. After they would come in and meet with us, they met as a team and kind of discussed, maybe as a group, where they saw maybe a need or something, and then they would get in touch with us and say what they thought that we should do. So that was really helpful. And then the ALS Mid-Atlantic Association has done a ton for us, a lot of different things too. Again, they have also been here since the very beginning. We have a wonderful counselor, Janie, that has been with us from the beginning. And when we would go to these clinic visits, it's very overwhelming. You have all these different people coming in telling you all different things, especially at the beginning and as things were progressing. And then Janie and sometimes Gail or another nurse or counselor would come in and sort of say, okay, take a deep breath. How are you feeling? And they really helped us deal with the emotional part of everything and just the overall quality of our life. Are you getting out? Are you doing this? How are the kids? They really, kind of walked us through making sure that, I was taking care of myself and Bryan was getting what he needed. And they were great with the kids. One of the nurses came to our house and sat with the kids to, kind of talk with them in their terms. What was ALS? What did it look like? What were some things that they might be that they might be seeing with Bryan, and answer questions. And that was really helpful too, because there was questions they asked that I didn't even know that they were thinking about. So that was really helpful. That meant a lot to us that she did that. They've also helped us with when we were renovating the home. We were able to meet with them. They've supplied a lot of equipment as things have come up, and they've been great. We say we need something, somebody's bringing it to the house within a couple days. So it's been really great. And there's a lot of really good events, getting out to see people, which has also been really helpful, just being around other families and people that are going through the same thing that we are. And then the support groups. I'm part of a caregiver support group that Janie runs, and that's been also really helpful because we're very fortunate that we have a very strong and wide support system with family and friends, but people don't really know what it's like and what you're going through unless you're going through it yourself. So having that support group and hearing other people say things that I've thought or that I've dealt with is helpful. And same with the events, getting to meet other families and just kind of and learning from their experiences and how they've dealt with things too. It's been helpful. So, in a lot of ways.
That's incredible. It makes me feel good being here because it's one thing going to work, and I appreciate anyone's job, but it's another thing to feel like it's worth coming in because we're making a difference. And as I sat here listening to you, it really makes it seem like what people like Gail and Janie do is not so much what's on their resume or like their job responsibilities, but who they are as people in your life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And so I think this is for Bryan and Lisa. I think you may both be able to answer, but we'll see. How do you work? Is there anything else about how you work with our nurses and social workers after a clinic visit?
So I'll answer that one. One thing I will say is the team at Jefferson and the team at the ALS Mid-Atlantic, they're always available in between visits. Anytime anything comes up, we can reach out, to the doctors if it's something medical, if it's something we need, in a different format, reach out to Mid-Atlantic. Just knowing that they're there and you don't feel bad, like, reaching out to them or asking questions because they make it very clear that they're here for us and they want to support us, not just during that visit, but throughout the whole process. So that's a big part of it. And this, the support groups in between also, it's helpful.
Mm-hmm. And you can let me know if Bryan has more to add, so I don't want to interrupt him if he has an answer.
Yeah, no, we're good. That's good.
So I do want to get to another question we have for Bryan, and then I'll get back to you again, Lisa. So it might go out of order from what we may have discussed. But your story, Bryan and Lisa, made such a huge impact on everyone at the annual celebration, including the lawmakers who were there. So what would you want elected leaders to know about ALS?
Tony, thank you so much for inviting Lisa and I to share at the celebration hosted by ALS United. The event was an incredible showcase of everyone who is fighting so hard to make a difference in the lives of those families impacted by ALS. I hope I made my fellow pals proud. As far as elected leaders are concerned, I think it really boils down to one thing. People living with ALS need leaders who act, not just sympathize. Raising awareness is awesome, but it's not enough. Public statements are awesome, but it's not enough. People living with ALS need sustained research funding, better caregiver support, and streamlined access to equipment and trials. Research funding is not abstract, it's hope. Research funding is the only path to treatment and, one day, a cure. For people with ALS, progress doesn't mean someday. It means now.
That's really wonderful, and I will get that message to them. I'll be in Harrisburg soon, and we'll talk with our Congress people as well, make sure they see your message. And also point out that our main speaker for the event, John Boog-Sciambi, or Sciambi, I might be pronouncing it wrong still, he changed his whole speech after hearing you guys because it was so profound on him, and he is a commentator with many years of experience, and it made such an impact. Lisa, what was it like for that when you heard other people commenting about Bryan and your story, just during that event?
Yeah, it's amazing. It was encouraging being at that event and seeing the scope of people that were there that are invested in ALS and research and raising money and stuff. I thought that was great, and yeah, it's amazing. I'm proud of Bryan for getting out there and doing that, and seeing the impact it's making has been wonderful. And I think, to me, it's important that people. I'm kind of stealing this from somebody else that I heard say this a while ago, but I feel like if people can know our family and know, like, you know, have a personal connection with it, and they can kind of, you know, come to love us and, you know, care about us, that maybe that will transfer over to just caring about ALS and being invested in, you know, wanting to kind of help and just raise that awareness.
Right. Empathy starts with one person at a time. One of the ways we empathize is with family caregivers. You mentioned the caregiver group, Lisa. So, what advice do you have for spouses and other family caregivers?
The biggest thing I will say is allow people to help you. It's kind of humbling to need help. We were in a profession where we took care of kids and we're used to caring for others. And, you know, it's a weird feeling when somebody says, "Can I do this for you? Can I do that for you?" And, you know, it took me a little bit to realize, like, I needed that help. I couldn't do it all myself. And one of my friends that I had mentioned, whose husband had passed away from ALS, she said to me at the beginning, "I want you to practice saying, 'Thank you, I hope to pay it forward one day.'" She said, just, that's your stock comment. Instead of like trying to think in your head, like, should I accept this help? Just accept the help and say that. And that kind of helped me to feel, you know, a little bit better about the help. But I wanted to be able to kind of be the best I could for Bryan and also for my kids. And I quickly realized I couldn't do that trying to take on everything myself. So being open to help was a big thing. One of the things the counselors at Mid-Atlantic would say to me a lot was take time for myself. And that's hard too, because, you know, I feel guilty that I can go out for a walk or I can go to dinner with friends and Bryan's home and can't do that. So there's a lot of guilt associated with that. But I also knew that I had to do those things for myself, again, to, you know, be the best person that I could be for him. And the other thing that I also learned, and my friend told me this too, is to keep in mind one thing, is that with ALS disease, it's constantly changing. There's change all the time. And sometimes we would get caught up in one particular thing we were dealing with, and it seemed overwhelming, and I would just try to remind myself, okay, we're not going to be stuck in this spot forever. Things are going to change. You know, for better or worse, things would change, and then we would be dealing with something new. So that was something I learned too.
I really appreciate what you said there in all manners, because I know that I've had family, when we had ALS in our family, my dad would feel guilty, you know, because he visited my grandfather every day. And so the days he didn't, I know it was like a burden on him, like that stress of not being there. But I also really know that you are paying it forward. You're paying it forward in so many ways. Even just right now, sharing your stories, plural, because you have your collective, your individual stories as Bryan and Lisa, and your collective stories as a family. And, you know, that's inspiring the next person, whether they volunteer or donate or spread the word or just feel more comfortable talking about it. So that means a lot. And I know that you're also, you know, making an impact for the future through research, because you have been involved in different ways. So I think Bryan might have an answer here. You know, have you been involved in ALS research, and why should others be involved in research?
I actually have that answer from talking with him, but
That's fine.
so yeah, he was involved in a trial for medication early on, and also donating some spinal fluid. And we just felt like we didn't want to just sit back and let ALS happen to us. He wanted to do something, felt like he was being proactive or just doing something. And we know it's time consuming, you know, you can have side effects and things like that. But we appreciated the people that went before us and did the trials and kind of got, you know, helped get the medication that is available right now. So we just felt like we had to do our part, in participating. And we also know and learned a little bit more that every trial, even if it fails or the medication doesn't move on or get approved, there are so many little things they're learning from those trials that can help, with the bigger picture. So that was another reason that we felt like, we needed to do our part.
Right. Every study, even if it fails, adds to our knowledge of why this didn't work. And other researchers will pick up on it. And someone from, you may be involved in a study at the Jefferson Weinberg Center, which is wonderful. And maybe it didn't get the results they wanted, but someone else from another place anywhere in the country or even the world might see that information and say, ooh, we have this other thing. And maybe if we learn from what Dr. Passanelli did at Jefferson, we'll take on this, or vice versa, because I've seen her work, recorded in other places. So that it's so important that people are involved. We talk about how we donate, we give money to research here, but being able to facilitate so you guys can participate in research is an essential part of our mission. Now, one thing we have talked about, I know you're proud of your kids that you've taught. It's so good to be a teacher, but I think the most important question I have today is, how have your children made you proud through this journey? And can you keep me from crying when you answer this? So, how have your children made you proud through this journey with ALS?
Actually, they've been a huge disappointment, letting me down on every single level. I'm just kidding. But this is an impossible question to answer, because anything I say will fall woefully short of the actual pride I feel in my heart and soul for them. And I definitely don't want to leave Lisa out of the equation either. There are two ways it can go with your spouse when you get diagnosed with a devastating disease like ALS. It can expose and weaken all the little nooks and crannies of the relationship. Or it can bring you even closer and stronger than you ever thought possible. Think of it this way. Imagine you are laying down in the middle of the road, unable to move or talk, and a giant steamroller is coming down the street with these 3 letters on the license plate. ALS. It just gets to the very tips of your toes when your spouse walks into up and sees what's happening. It's too late to stop it, so your husband or wife quickly buries their head in their arms so they don't have to watch and experience the pain. But Lisa did something absolutely remarkable. She literally did the exact opposite. She walked over to me, laid down next to me, held my hand, and put her head on my chest. And I couldn't possibly love her anymore for doing it. Getting back to my kids though. They were 20, 18, and 14 when Lisa and I came home from the doctor and told them I had ALS. The weight of that would have crushed most families into complete submission. But my children took what could have been a tragic story of loss and suffering and turned it into one of the greatest love stories of all time. I am in awe of my kids, and I lean on them every single day for strength, courage, and inspiration. To say that I love them more than anything in this world would be a massive understatement.
I didn't know you were write all that, so now I'm crying.
It's okay. That's great. We're allowed to have our own emotions and feelings, and that's what makes us human. If we didn't, then it would be a pretty lousy life to live. So you guys, we're proud to be associated with you, and we hope to continue this relationship. I know so many people are inspired by your story, not because of the disease, but because of the people you are, as Bryan and Lisa Rosica. We do have their story on our website at alsmidatlantic.org. You can go there to donate, join the ALS United Walk, find out about other events, connect with our care services team, learn about research, anything you need about ALS in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. You can go to our website, alsmidatlantic.org, follow us on social media at ALS Mid-Atlantic. Lisa, I don't know if you have any other final words from either of you two. I don't want to cut you off early, but is there anything you want to add before we finish here today?
No, we just want to say thank you for this opportunity, and it meant a lot to us to be able to share a little bit. So we thank you for all that you do, and for letting us do a little part here.
Well, it's no little part. You guys are essential. You are at the heart of what we do. It is that direct relationship with our ALS families. Again, if you're listening, please visit us at alsmidatlantic.org. Subscribe to her and find our past episodes on YouTube and on iTunes and Spotify. Thank you. Together, we will end ALS.